There are words we've been trained to fear. Words that taste like failure before we even say them. One of those words is surrender. From childhood, we're told to fight, to push, to endure without bending. We're taught that real strength is holding, never yielding. We idolize the ones who never let go, who keep their fists clenched no matter how strong the storm grows. We call that courage, we call that resilience, we call that victory. But what if it isn't? What if surrender is not loss, but life itself bending us into survival? What if refusing to yield is the very thing that breaks us? I have lived this lie. I thought strength was proving I could hold everything together. Even as my body begged for rest, I refused. Even as those I loved told me to let go, I pushed harder. I wore my refusal like a badge of honor, until one day the weight grew heavier than my body could bear, and I collapsed. Not metaphorically, literally. I remember the dizziness, the sweat dripping down my back, the humiliation of realizing I had broken myself in public, in front of strangers, simply because I would not surrender. That collapse is what begins this detour, because in that moment I realized something devastating. The thing I thought was strength was arrogance in disguise. My refusal to yield didn't make me whole. It shattered me. And yet, even now, I struggle to accept this truth. I still feel the tug of shame when I imagine surrender. I still hear the voices whispering that yielding is weakness, that bending means defeat. But those voices don't tell the whole story. Look closer at the bamboo in a storm. The wind bends it to the ground, but it doesn't break. It sways, it yields, it bows low to the earth, and then, when the storm passes, it rises whole. Contrast that with the rigid tree trunk, unbending, unyielding. It resists, it holds, it refuses, and it snaps. So which is truly strong, the one who resists until shattering, or the one who yields and endures? The contradiction is sharp, and it cuts at me even now. Surrender looks like defeat, but it is strength in disguise. This is the ache I want to confess tonight. That all the years I clung to control, all the years I mistook rigidity for resilience, I was breaking myself in ways I couldn't see. And it was only when I bent, only when I surrendered, that I began to endure. Let's lay the lie bare. The lie says, strength is unbrokenness. The lie says, to yield is to lose. The lie says, if you bend, you will be defeated. But watch closely. Who survives the storm, the rigid or the yielding? Who remains whole when the winds rise? Who endures when life presses harder than we ever imagined? We worship resistance. Our culture applauds the fighter, the one who never gives up, never steps back, never asks for rest. We glorify exhaustion as proof of loyalty. We glorify broken backs as evidence of devotion. We call it endurance, but really, it is slow suicide dressed as virtue. I believed it. I absorbed it into my skin. I thought that if I could just hold on tightly enough, if I could keep everything in place, then maybe nothing would collapse. I thought surrender would mean failing the people I loved, failing myself, failing the expectations placed on my shoulders. But here's what the lie never admits. Refusing to surrender doesn't prevent collapse, it guarantees it. Because the body has limits, the spirit has limits. Even mountains erode, even rivers change course, even stars burn out. What arrogance convinced me I could outlast the natural order? What foolishness persuaded me that strength was the same as resistance? I remember the micro behaviors that revealed this lie in me, the way I would keep working even when fever flushed my skin, the way I'd nod at advice but ignore it, telling myself I could manage, the way I apologized for exhaustion instead of honoring it, the way I saw rest not as survival but as shame. And always beneath it all, the fear, if I yielded, I would be less reliable, less respected, less loved. But the collapse proved otherwise. Yielding did not make me less. Yielding made me whole again. The contradiction is brutal in its simplicity. What looks like weakness is strength. What looks like shame is dignity. What looks like defeat is endurance. I see now that my so-called resilience was really arrogance, the arrogance of thinking I could control what only surrender could carry. So the lie fractures. The highway we're all told to drive, resist, hold, fight, never bend, it's cracked. I drove it for too long. It left me broken, humiliated, ashamed. And yet, in the very moment of collapse, I discovered another road, a quieter one where yielding is not defeat but survival. The question that remains, the one that still lingers as the storm clouds gather over this road I'm on tonight, can I trust surrender enough to let it bend me before I break? I remember the day my body betrayed me, or perhaps more truthfully, the day I betrayed my body. It had been weeks of strain. Work that I refused to slow, obligations I refused to set down, nights where I told myself I was fine, even as the mirror showed hollow eyes and a trembling frame. People told me to rest. I laughed it off. I told them I was strong enough, disciplined enough, resilient enough. What I really meant was I am too proud to yield. That morning, I woke with a headache, sharp enough to blur the edges of the room. My breath was uneven, my chest felt tight, but I ignored it. I showered, dressed neatly, knotted my tie as if appearances could hold me together. On the train, sweat collected under my collar despite the cool air. By the time I stood to leave, the world tilted. The floor rushed up toward me. I collapsed there, in public, in a space where strangers' eyes became mirrors to my humiliation. I can still feel the heat of their stares, the awkwardness of hands trying to help me up, the distant echo of someone calling for assistance. I wanted to wave them away, to pretend I was fine, but my body refused to play along. I had resisted surrender, and in the end, I shattered. That collapse still haunts me, not only because of the embarrassment, but because of the realization. If I had bent earlier, I would not have broken. If I had surrendered to my body's need for rest, to the gentle urging of those who cared, to the reality of my own limits, I would have endured. It took days before I could leave my home again, without feeling shame burning in my chest. And yet, once the shame began to soften, I saw something new. The collapse was not defeat, it was the cost of resisting too long. And in that collapse, a truth emerged that I could not ignore. To bend is to endure. I often think of bamboo when I recall that moment. Its beauty is not in its rigidity, but in its suppleness. In a storm, bamboo does not fight the wind. It bows low, its stalks bending so far you'd think they'd snap. But when the storm passes, the grove rises whole. Its endurance is not resistance, but surrender. That is the image I return to when my pride tempts me again. When I feel the old impulse to push, to grip, to hold. I remember the sweat dripping onto the train floor, the way the world blurred to black, the humiliation of strangers' concern. I remember bamboo, bending and still whole. The collapse became my teacher, and surrender, the word I once despised, became my salvation. Why do we confuse surrender with defeat? Perhaps because we live in a world that worships resistance. Heroes in our stories fight to the last breath. Champions are praised for never backing down. We equate bending with cowardice, resting with laziness, letting go with failure. And so, surrender wears the mask of shame. But strength is not unbrokenness. Strength is the capacity to yield without shattering. I think of it this way. When a storm rages, two trees stand side by side. One is stiff, proud, refusing to bow. The other bends deeply, even touches the ground. The storm ends. The stiff tree lies splintered, broken in pieces. The bent tree rises again. Which one endured? Which one carried true strength? The more I sit with this, the clearer it becomes. Surrender bends. Arrogance breaks. It is not surrender that destroys us. It is our refusal to surrender that does. And yet, I know the resistance inside me. I can hear its objections even now. If I yield, people will think I'm weak. If I stop, someone else will overtake me. If I bend, I'll lose my dignity. But I have to answer those voices with honesty. What dignity did I keep when I collapsed in front of strangers? What strength did I prove when I broke myself through stubborn pride? Surrender is not humiliation. It is wisdom. It is the body knowing what the ego denies. It is the spirit whispering that to endure, you must bow. I have learned to call surrender not a collapse, but a form of trust. Trust that life will not destroy me if I stop fighting it. Trust that bending will not erase me, but preserve me. Trust that storms do not last forever, but the ability to yield will carry me through them. Yielding isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The storm always outlasts pride, but never surrenders. To bend is not to lose, it's to remain whole. These are not slogans, but reminders carved into my memory, etched by the cost of my collapse. So perhaps surrender is not an ending at all. Perhaps surrender is a doorway. By yielding, we pass through into a deeper kind of endurance. By bowing, we survive. By letting go, we remain whole. It is not fighters alone who endure. It is those who know when to bend. When I look back now, I see how surrender has changed the way I live. I no longer wear exhaustion like a medal. I no longer call collapse proof that I gave my all. These days I pause before the breaking point. I rest when my body whispers, not when it screams. I bow before the storm so that I can stand afterward. I don't always trust it, but I return to it often. When I feel the old pride rising, when I hear the old whisper that strength means pushing through, I hold that stone in my hand. It reminds me that the proud tree breaks, but the bamboo bends and remains whole. Surrender is not the end of strength. It is the practice that makes strength possible. So I want to ask you, where are you still resisting when you could be yielding? Where are you exhausting yourself by refusing to bend? Where are you clinging to pride while your body, your heart, your spirit are begging you to let go? Maybe for you it's work you refuse to pause even though you know it's stealing your health. Maybe it's a relationship you hold together by force when what it needs is space. Maybe it's the expectation that you must always smile, always endure, always keep it together, when what you need is to collapse safely into someone's arms and admit, I cannot do this alone. Yielding is not betrayal. Yielding is not failure. Yielding is how you remain whole. And so I invite you, as I invite myself every day, bend before the storm. Trust the ground to hold you as you bow low. Let go of the illusion that you must hold everything in place. You are not the architect of the winds, you are bamboo in their path. Bend so that you may rise again. Because what if surrender is not the opposite of courage, but its hidden shape? What if bending is not cowardice, but the truest strength we will ever know? The storm has grown quiet now. The trees outside sway gently, their roots still firm, their branches still alive. And the bamboo, bowed low in the wind, stands unbroken. This is the lesson I want to leave with you. Strength is not the refusal to yield. Strength is the wisdom to bend. For too long we confused pride with resilience. For too long we mistook stubbornness for courage. For too long we believed that only the unbroken endure, but life has always told another story. The storms come. They always come. And the ones who endure are not the ones who resist forever. They are the ones who bow low, who yield to what is greater than themselves, who trust that surrender is not erasure, but preservation. So take this benediction with you as I carry it myself. Yield to the storm and remain whole. Let it echo in you when you feel shame rise at the thought of letting go. Let it guide you when you are tempted to prove your worth by breaking yourself in half. Let it console you when storms rage and everything feels at risk of collapse. Because surrender is not the end. It is the road through. It is the art of yielding without shattering. It is the strength that does not boast, the dignity that does not shout, the courage that does not need to be seen. Yield to the storm and remain whole. And when the winds have passed, when the branches sway again in gentle rhythm, when the ground holds steady beneath your feet, may you stand taller not because you never bent, but because you did.